Hey everyone, welcome to the program. It's good to have you here. This is Piano Tech Radio Hour. Good to see you out there on the socials, Facebook, YouTube. If you're catching us for the first time, we'll give a little bit of an intro to the program momentarily, and we'll let our Zoom audience in as well. And then we'll get started with our guest for the day. I'll explain the program momentarily. But yeah, we like to give a minute for people to get settled. Got our Zoom folks coming in and get you guys out on the socials. We'll also give you some information in the program here about how you can join the Zoom calls directly in the future if you like what we're doing here and get a little bit closer to the action. But yeah, let's get started. I'll say welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. We gather every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world, including manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, and of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal is to become better at our craft, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. You can also subscribe to Radio Hour. It's just $16 a month. You get direct access to each week's private Zoom call, as well as all the archival recordings of over 200 episodes in our member area. Join using the link bit.ly/join PTRH. That's bit.ly/join PTRH. Always like to mention podcast audio only version of the program. That's at pianotechradio.com. We've been top 100, top 10, even number one status in the performing arts category on iTunes, various locales throughout the world. Also, we have our Substack blog where you'll find valuable and rare information about the piano trade and give you insights into what you'll find in our member area. And we also have our LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, our socials. You can also sign up for our email list to stay abreast of everything going on with masterclasses and Radio Hour. You just go to pianotechniciansmasterclass.com, name, email, and you'll be continuing to stay up to date. All right, I would love to introduce our guest for today's program. His name is Brian Shepard. He's a composer, producer, percussionist, educator, author, and music tech pioneer whose career spans more than 5 decades. He performed professionally for nearly 30 years, including 13 years as principal percussionist for the Oklahoma City Philharmonic, and later held senior academic leadership roles at several universities. Brian is also the author of Refining Sound, a practical guide to synthesis and synthesizers, and has received national recognition for his innovations in online music instruction and audio technology. He now lives in Setúbal, Portugal, where he continues to compose, perform, and produce music. Brian, welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour.
Thank you. Obrigado, as we say here. It's a
Obrigado.
pleasure to be here.
Muito prazer.
Boa tarde, Portugal, or good afternoon from Portugal.
I know Brazilian Portuguese a little bit. I studied capoeira.
Yeah. It's Brazilian is different from
I'm sure.
European Portuguese. It's very similar to European Spanish and Latin and Central American Spanish. There are obviously similar roots, but the languages have done a bit of a diversion over the years.
Now, my question is, has Refining Sound, a practical guide to synthesis and synthesizers been translated into Portuguese?
Not by me.
And
No, I don't believe it has. I
can
believe
you
it's
translate the title into Portuguese?
probably not.
Probably not. Do you know the word for synthesizer in Portuguese?
It's like synthesizer. I would have to look it up. I apologize.
Okay,
One
all
of,
right.
I've been
It's
here.
one of my favorite Spanish words. So the Spanish word for synthesizer is sintetizador.
Yeah, yeah.
I like that word. So I don't know if it's the same in Portuguese.
I don't know. The Portuguese language, the European Portuguese language in particular, is quite difficult.
Yeah.
And I've been here about 3.5 years now, and and it's funny because I speak German quite well, but learning a third language, especially as an older age, boy, that's a tough road. But we're getting there and learning more and more. And I can now function and work, meet people, go in stores, buy things, that sort of stuff. But yeah, a lot of the nitty gritty detail stuff I still struggle with.
Well, good for you for giving it a go. I had AI give me a translation. Aperfeiçoar som guia prático de síntese e sintetizadores.
Sintetizadores. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know if that was
yeah.
well pronounced, but
Yeah. It's okay. It's okay.
as we typically do on the program, I'd love to take a walk down memory lane, go back to Brian Shepard's childhood. How did you get first introduced into music, and how did this become clear that it was going to be such a central part of your life?
When I was in grade school, when you got, let's see, I guess it was in all the classes, all the grades had some sort of music element to the classes. But when the school I was at, when you got into fifth grade, you either had to be in chorus or band. Everybody in the school was in either chorus or band. And so I didn't play an instrument, and so I was in chorus. And I apparently had a lovely little voice as a young boy. And the choir teacher, I still remember her name, Mrs. Rochelle, made me sing a solo on the Christmas concert. And my little fifth, sixth grade ego, whatever it was just traumatized. And I begged my parents to get me a drum so I could get into band. And so I started playing drums. And gosh, one of the things that we will probably touch on at several points in here, one of the driving forces in my life is I'm an incredibly curious person. I always want to know how things work, why they do what they do, how this happens, that sort of stuff. And it doesn't matter what the subject is. Whatever it is, I want to dive into it as deep as I can to figure out how things go. And so that same sort of energy got applied to playing drums, and I moved rather rapidly and got where I was, even at a very young age, was doing quite well. And so by the time I was 16, I was playing professionally. And playing in clubs. I actually wasn't old enough to go in, but I was playing in them. And one thing led to another. Initially I wanted to be a rock drummer, and I had the whole big drum kit with all the toms and the double bass and the whole bit. And in the early '80s, disco really took off. And I would go play these gigs, and all anybody wanted was and I hated it. I was already playing a lot of orchestral music at the time anyway, so I just decided I'm not gonna. If this is where pop rock music is going, I don't want any part of it anymore. Fortunately, that didn't last, but so I literally sold my drum kit and went entirely into the classical world, and stayed there until not too many years ago when I retired, and moved over here.
Okay. In the classical world, what's been your evolution in terms of, so you said you kind of moved from rock into classical, and when you're inside the classical world, is it mostly just, you're playing in ensembles, and, the music that's curated by whoever's in charge, or, did you develop certain niches that you got interested in the classical domain more than others?
Well, first of all, I love music broadly, and certainly in the classical world. the percussion world in the classical environment really doesn't start until the 20th century. I mean, there are a few things here and there before that, but by and large, you're talking about music of the 20th century and now 21st as a percussionist. But again, this curiosity thing, I always needed to know. I don't want to say wanted to know. I had this sort of need to know. The thing I was playing at any given moment, why did it exist? Why was it there? What was its role? What was its purpose? And one of the things as when I was at principal percussion, I would often have to hire people. If we needed a much bigger section, I would hire people, and often there would be like graduate students from a nearby university or something, who in many cases didn't have much experience playing orchestrally. And they would come in, and so they're playing triangle or something. And so they have this note that's on the end of 3 in this one particular measure. And so they are totally focused on 1, 2, 3, ding, hitting on the end of 3. And invariably, they would be in the wrong place. Because what they didn't understand, and this is what I would have to coach them through, is the composer writing that piece didn't say, I want to write a triangle note on the end of 3. That's not what he or she were thinking. What they were thinking is, I have this clarinet line that goes, and I want to hit this triangle at the end, which happens to be on the end of 3. So what's important is that the note lines up with the end of the clarinet run, regardless of what fraction of the beat it happens to fall on. And so what you have to do, and what I would coach my young players on, is how to identify what you're playing with what else is going on in the orchestra, so that it just makes so much more musical sense. And as a composer, again, I know that when I would put some of these little coloration things, it wasn't that I needed it to be on some particular rhythmic pulse. It was because I was trying to color a particular sound or event that was going on in the orchestra. Do you remember the painter Bob Ross?
Oh yeah, Bob Ross. The happy little tree.
Yeah, the happy. Yeah. So you remember every time he would do a painting, he would get to the end, and it looks really pretty darn good. But then he would often take his brush and dip it into a little bit of white and just kind of go ding, 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 ding. And all of a sudden, it just added life, because it would create these little sparkles of light in the painting. And I often think that's what many composers do with the percussion family, is that they are writing these little sparkles that just illuminate whatever the piece of music is. And so it's important to understand those roles. And so that, again, part of that curiosity, and I think one of the reasons why I was so successful was I was so focused on what else is going on in the orchestra that my part fits in with, rather than just, dogmatically saying I'm going to play this at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's actually an interesting. Surprisingly, I mean, I've only played in bands, like, rock bands or something, or jazz bands. But I've played big bands and things like that, but it's not been a major part. And that's an interesting way to think about that. I can honestly say I haven't really thought of, right? Like how the parts that you're playing are sort of intended to be part of a larger whole, and to think about it that way. It happens maybe intuitively. I'm doing that anyways, but yeah, that's great. And especially the percussion. Yeah, percussion is fun. What do you feel was your forte among the percussion instruments, right? There's so many options.
Oh my gosh.
Or maybe a favorite, or do you have a favorite? Is the glockenspiel
your audience is probably going to laugh, but actually my favorite instrument was the triangle.
Really? Okay.
It really was. I know that people are going to go, what? Anybody can play a triangle. You'd be surprised. And there are so many subtle shades of sound you can get with such a simple little instrument, depending upon where the beater strikes it, the angle, the amount of force, where it is on the shape of the bar. And you can truly it's like a player on any other instrument where they can change their embouchure or change the finger pressure to make subtle changes in the sound. You can do those sorts of things, and it's more than just whack. And create these subtle shades of color that really make it sing and work well with the part. And I just always had a kind of a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah. I'm just, I totally get that. And we often talk
And
on the
and I
program.
should mention I am a nerd, so
Yeah. Well, I often bring up a theme that I've come across on the program when I talk to specialists of all sorts. They're usually paying attention to nuances
yeah,
that another person would be like, "What does it even matter?
Yeah.
What are you doing?"
yeah, yeah.
But I also just had this funny scene in my head, which I think would be kind of great. I don't know what type of movie or skit it's in, but you got the triangle player, right? And they have their note and they play it. And then you got some other, member of the group or the conductor. It's, oh, no, it's all, that's all right. And then they
Yeah.
do it again and it sounds the same.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah,
but
trust
I
me,
believe
it
you.
happens.
I believe
Yeah,
that. I believe
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's those subtle kinds of things were always a lot of fun, and so yeah. But I mean, whether it was the xylophone, snare drum, timpani, crash cymbals, whatever. I loved all of it, and thoroughly enjoyed all of it, and so. Playing cymbals on anything by Tchaikovsky or Mahler, I mean, it's just those are like moments you live for as an orchestral percussionist. They're always incredibly exciting parts to play. So yeah, it's not the big crash boom bang kind of stuff that people might think.
hmm Well, I want people to hear a little bit of a sample here. We talked about introducing a piece that you composed, and I think it's especially apropos for our audience. And so we can talk about it for a little bit so we got the context. But yeah, so this is All the Pretty Colors of the Rainbow. Tell us a little bit about this, how you came up with this. I don't know how long ago this was part of your repertoire, but yeah.
Yeah, I think I wrote this in probably about 2010 or so.
Okay.
So it's, I guess, about 15, 16 years ago. I had a good friend who was a brilliant pianist, or is a brilliant pianist in Los Angeles. I was teaching at USC at the time, and he asked me to write a piece for a program he was putting together that was for microtonal piano. Now, before your audience goes crazy over that, the stuff that we were doing, if you had actually attempted to do on an actual acoustic piano, would probably damage it. And so what we ended up doing, there's an incredibly sophisticated physical modeling instrument called Pianotech by a French company called Modart. And it is, I know nothing is truly the same thing as sitting at the physical instrument. I mean, we used to have a Steinway B in our house, and before we moved here, that sense of power of sitting at that instrument and playing it. But that electronic instrument is probably the closest thing I've ever found to that experience. But it also has the ability to be radically retuned and still maintain the kinds of timbres that you would expect from the strings of a piano, the soundboard, all of that sort of stuff. So I wrote it using that particular instrument. And essentially, I took the pentatonic scale and essentially made 4 versions of each note that were slightly detuned from each other. And so depending upon if I wanted to push it high or push it low, I could play with whichever version of D I wanted, and so it has elements where you feel like, oh yeah, that's sort of recognizable, and then you'll hear some things that go, that's stretching my ears a bit. It was a fun piece to play. The pianist is actually looking at a scordatura part where, as far as they're concerned, it looks like just a regular piece of piano music.
Right.
And so, as they're saying like C, D, E, F, G, as they move up and down the keys on the instrument, what they're actually getting is slightly flat D, slightly less flat D,
Mm.
D, slightly sharp D, slightly more sharp D, something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so it's written, like I said, in a scordatura type of format. So it lays perfectly well under the hands, but what comes out is something that's very different. And so, yeah, we can play a little bit if you'd like. Let me. I've got it here. This is there's a slow introduction to it, and then this is sort of into the sort of faster theme. We'll just play a few minutes. I don't know. We could,
Sure, that's good.
yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. It was a fascinating experience. Obviously stretched the idea of, normally we think in terms of the 12 tones of the typical octave. And so to have this sort of weird, interesting, stretched tuning was kind of fascinating to play with, and I really enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, I mean, I've been my son takes cello lessons. He's 8 years old, and so I've been playing the cello myself.
Yeah,
It's actually kind of fun because he just kind of organically that's the instrument we've
that's a,
put him on. But I always thought if I were to learn another instrument, it would be the cello. So it's perfect kismet. We got an adult-sized one, and I've been playing on it.
good.
But so there's two things about the cello that are way different than the piano. Number one, when you're a beginner, you sound terrible. Like you cannot get anything in tune, no
Yeah.
matter what. But the flip side of that is you can play micro. You're always playing, and that's why it might sound bad. You're accidentally playing microtonal music. But yeah, and I was just having so much fun just playing like a tenth. Because as piano tuners, a tenth is an interval that we listen to a lot because
Right.
it helps us understand
Right.
where we're at in the tuning.
Right. Right.
And so a tenth is pretty easy on the cello. And yeah, it was just so fun to just play a tenth and then make a little bit sharp, make a little bit flat, glide up to the fourth or whatever. And it's magical, to be honest, to be
Yeah.
able to play around with the different
Yeah.
actual
Yeah.
pitches. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, I have a theremin also, and obviously there
Yeah.
is, there's nothing between point A and B other than just total open change of frequency. So yeah, it's challenging.
So tell me about, let's talk about, I want to talk about, yeah, I want to talk about how you got to Portugal. So yeah, tell me why Portugal, and how long's it been? Are you a resident there? Like, how does that work?
We moved here in January of 23, my wife and I. Uh, we moved from California. We both were at a point where we could retire, and both my wife and I have also lived in Europe at various times in our lives, and we knew we wanted to spend time traveling around Europe and having to always fly back and forth. And we're both adventurers, and so we were looking for kind of something new and unusual to do with our retirement. We both, interestingly, speak German, and so one of our first thoughts was, well, let's move to Germany, but we don't like cold. So anyhow, we moved here, as I said, in January of 23. So we've been here a little over 3.5 years now, and it's a lovely, amazing country. The people here are incredibly giving and loving. It's one of the oldest countries in Europe. In fact, Lisbon, or Lisboa, as we say it here, is the oldest European capital, and it has a rich musical culture. And I've actually been experimenting with some of the Portuguese instruments. One in particular, they have a drum here that's known as the aduf, it's a square drum. It's a double-sided. It's about this thick, with a head on both sides, and maybe about this big square. And you play it with your hands and fingers. And they also put literally junk inside of it, so it has a rattle effect to it, and so it's been around since the time of the Moors, so like around the 800s. That instrument has been in existence, and it's still used. So I've been playing that, but yeah, we wanted to be on this side of the pond, and to give us a chance to explore more, and also, just like I said, a new interesting challenge, which learning the language, learning the culture. We are at this point what are still called temporary residents, or we're long-term temporary residents, and you have to have lived here for 10 years to apply for citizenship. So we still have a ways to go in that regard, but yeah, we're getting to the point where our residency is becoming more and more permanent.
Do you maintain a place in the States, or that's just where you are? No.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, we own a place here, and really love it. Setúbal, the city that we're in, it's about 45 minutes south of Lisbon, and it's originally it was an old fishing village, and still has a very strong aquatic base to it, shipping, fishing, those sorts of things. But it also has this incredibly rich cultural history to it. I mean, there are so many bands and choirs and groups and what have you, and buskers, and then artists, painters, sculptors. I mean, it's really an amazing artistic culture and community here. And so, when we came over here, we looked at various places around Portugal. And when we came into Setúbal, we had some friends that were living here, and they encouraged us to come visit, and we did, and just fell in love with the place, and so yeah, we're pretty happy here.
Very nice.
So and now, so I mean, I've gotten myself into a couple of bands that I'm playing in now.
Yeah, I was curious. Yeah, so you are.
Oh yeah.
I think and that mixes in with sort of my next question, which is, it's interesting to think about, retirement, I feel, as a creative person, right? Mm-hmm. And of course you worked in academia, which it's easy to imagine retiring from academia. That sounds like a job.
It is.
Playing music is a little bit different. But
you never stop being a musician.
Right.
Yeah. And so I mean, I think what has happened was, before I left the States, most of my musical output was involved in doing orchestrations and arrangements for people. Mm-hmm. Coming over here, I've sort of fallen off of that radar. And now it's become much more of playing, and also I do a lot of production for people. I don't record, but if they go into a recording studio and bring me their tracks, then I'll mix and master them and things like that for them.
Okay. Um, let's talk a little bit about academia. What got you started? Uh, what kept you there?
Mhm.
And we may or may not talk about why you left. But yeah, go ahead.
Uh, you know, Going back to that thing about being curious, one of the things I learned quickly was my curiosity taught me to teach myself. And I found that sometimes I had to find several different ways to try to wrap my brain around something. And I found that by doing so, I got pretty good at being able to explain it to other people. And so rather than, here is the approach that I'm going to teach you, depending upon where a person was, I was pretty good at kind of moving around and finding the way that helped them get to what they were after. I, and I just really loved that process. I loved the engagement with students, both in the one-on-one as well as in the classroom. I think in many ways I enjoyed classroom teaching more than I even enjoyed the one-on-one teaching. I really did. I really enjoyed that. And I found that I could communicate well with students. I could convey the ideas that I wanted. They seemed to enjoy what I was providing. I always looked at my students not as I'm going to dispense information to you, but as much, hey, let's grow through this together. And I don't have all the answers, but let's look at it. And I might have a leg up on you, but I'm certainly not at the finish line. And so that was always my approach with them, and it was just a lot of fun. And so I became more and more engaged as a professor, and I got better and better promotions, and because people were recognizing the stuff that I was doing. And then ultimately it led to that fatal decision where I got into administration. And that is where good teachers go to die. Uh, and yeah, and at first it was, oh, well, you can keep teaching. You can keep teaching while you're doing all these thousands of other things as a dean. And no, it saps your soul. And so eventually that was all I was doing, was in what I used to refer to as administrivia. And I just decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. And so that was why I left. I mean, it certainly had its benefits, and this is one of the sad realities of academia, is they don't reward the people that teach. If you really want to get paid well in academia, you essentially have to stop teaching and become an administrator. And that's the sad reality of the sort of academic, especially in the university world. If you want to get a really good salary, you've got to essentially get out of the classroom. And that's sad. I knew some people that had refused that, and either kind of stayed not making a lot of money, or they had other sources of income to support them on. But so I got to the point where it wasn't fun anymore, and so that was why I left.
Hmm. And do you root for a college football team?
Several, actually. Most of
Yeah.
them are schools I attended.
Yeah.
I mean, Kansas Jayhawks, which is where I did my bachelor's, the Cincinnati Bearcats, and the Oklahoma Sooners, and which is where I did my doctorate, and then USC, the Trojans at USC, which is where I taught for so many years.
I was
So
at
yeah.
U. I was at USC about, well, I don't know, maybe about 9 months ago,
Hmm.
and for a conference at the Shriners
Yeah.
Auditorium there.
Yep.
And they had a game. They had a game. They had the tailgating and stuff. And I
Oh
was
yeah.
like, wow, they
Yeah.
are serious about
It's
this.
serious. Yeah. It really is. Yeah. And it's funny. And the whole time I was there, I actually never physically went to a game.
Oh wow.
I just, I had a big screen TV. I just stay home and watch it. Yeah, the event around the games could be quite amazing from what everybody told me.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Chaos in some ways too.
Yeah, yeah, yes, yes, yeah. No, I loved the music and restaurant scene in L.A. and that was sort of more my thing. But yeah, it just I've like I said, I eventually got to the point where I wasn't doing the stuff that had gotten me into it in the first place.
Hmm. Um, I want to talk a little bit about it's of course it's a totally different landscape these days. I don't know if you have a thought on that, but you seem to have, gone an interesting path where you built this career as a musician, right? And
Hmm.
you really kind of touched upon almost all the things you could, right? You, some teaching and
Hmm.
academia and
Hmm.
some composing and arranging um and it seems to have worked out for you. You're retired, it
Hmm.
seems like you're doing okay. But yeah, I love to just kind of hear about what your approach had been to your career and how much it was intentional, how much just kind of fell together. And if I don't know, you may have no thoughts at all about how people might think about their careers as musicians these days.
Yeah, you know, it is the folks that make a living doing one thing in music are very rare. And even when you look back at famous names in music history, you find that not only were they like writing what are now very well-known symphonies and things like that, but they were also teaching lessons on the side. They were giving piano lessons and copying music for other people and editing scores for some publishing company. I think that's kind of always been the gig, and it's a bit of an entrepreneurship kind of thing. And like I said, I've never been afraid of challenging myself to dig into something. And so, I was writing jingles. I was teaching percussion lessons. I was playing in an orchestra. I was, all these other kinds of things all going on at the same time, all of which were enjoyable, fulfilling, none of which were enough to support me full time in most cases, until really later in my career when I got into sort of more advanced university professorships. But yeah, I think that's part of the thing is most musicians do have to sort of pull together several things to make a good living and to be comfortable. And so yeah, I don't think that's anything new. I certainly didn't invent a wheel or anything like that, but it's part of the gig.
Mm. Yeah, it reminds me of. I feel like it's so easy to idolize our heroes in various domains and kind of make their careers and their lives feel like this sort of perfect,
Hmm.
expression of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
of the pinnacle of
Hmm.
professionalism or whatever. And
Hmm.
um, I don't know why it was. I was reading the biography of Leonardo da Vinci,
Hmm.
um, and there was this little vignette in there. There was like an abbot that had commissioned him for a piece or
Hmm.
something,
Hmm.
and it's just he's going back and forth, and they want it on a deadline, and they don't want to pay. I know, it's like all this stuff, and
Yeah,
you're like, it's Leonardo da Vinci, you want it on a deadline, and you don't want to pay, right? And
yeah,
that's all. It's every creator's life has to involve these kind of ugly moments of just trying to pull together, or just a living, just trying to
it
make a
does.
living.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah, I mean, I've certainly played gigs that I wished I hadn't. I've written charts for folks that were total jerks, and it was like nothing I could do was right. And those aren't fun. Uh, but at the same time, none of those did I not learn from. And that's the important thing, not to walk away just with, oh, that was a really bad deal. But okay, so I got some experience doing that. I got a little better at doing this, things like that. And so, yeah, I try to always walk away from those things with something of that in mind.
Tell me about your side quest. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I
Or
think so. I think
yeah,
so. But
tell me
go
about your
ahead.
side quest as a helicopter pilot.
Yeah. Oh
How
God.
did that? What did that happen after? Was that a transition into your pseudo retirement, or was that
No,
before or
no.
after your teaching and
Oh
academic
God.
stuff? What
Yeah.
happened there?
My father was a career Army officer. And as a kid, we would go to all of these military demonstration things that they would do to show stuff off, and they almost always had helicopters. And I was fascinated by those things. And one year, I, I part of my musical life involved a while back when still did the sort of thing. They didn't use AI to do it, but I wrote jingles. And one year I happened to have a pretty good year of writing jingles and made some good money. And I thought, I'm going to reward myself and go learn to fly a helicopter. And I wanted to do it purely as a lark. And so I found a company that was local that taught helicopter lessons and went and started learning to fly a helicopter. The guy that was the owner of the company kind of became a good friend. And as I was going through, he said, he had seen me interact with some of the students, and like I said, I'm pretty good at explaining things to people, and he saw that I could do that with some of the things related to flying, and he said, I would really be willing to help support you to go ahead and get your commercial and flight instructor license and then work for me. And like I said, it was not what I started out to do, but I thought, okay, let's see what happens. And so I did that and started flying professionally and teaching other people how to fly, and ultimately ended up, I took a leave of absence from the symphony because I'd been offered a job flying for a company in Atlanta that did, among other things, traffic reports for radio stations. And so I took off and moved down to Atlanta and flew there. And as the time was coming where my leave of absence was about to expire, I had to decide whether or not I would return or not. And for a variety of reasons, music was just that's my soul. That's who I am. And as a helicopter pilot, it was fun, but you're also kind of just a glorified cab driver. And so, yeah, I left. I came back and rejoined the orchestra. And so, yeah, I continued to fly for another couple of years as just sort of part-time, filling in with that company that I'd been with before. But eventually that dried up, and so, yeah, I haven't flown in years, but it was.
Oh,
was
you
fun
haven't?
while
I
it
was
lasted.
curious if you still.
No, oh no.
But you can, right? Or do you have to update
I would
some
have to
sort of
totally.
credentials? Or?
At this point, I probably would have to almost start over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because they're kind of like, I want to say dangerous, but you know what I mean? Like compared to planes, it's a little bit more.
Yeah.
You have to be a little bit more careful.
As we used to say, a helicopter is a million pieces of hardware trying to kill you. And so, yeah.
You didn't learn how to fly planes, just helicopters?
That is correct.
Oh, interesting. Actually, I haven't met many people who've done that. I know several people who fly planes, even professional pilots, but yeah, I've met a lot of helicopter pilots. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun, and it was rewarding while I was doing it. Had a good time, got to do some neat stuff, and but yeah, like I said, you were always a musician, and that pull was just too strong.
Yeah, you can't just beatbox over the intercom or anything, and
No.
it's not going to fulfill you. I'd also love to touch upon the LA music scene. So we talked a little bit about USC. I've got some connections in LA, so I've kind of been there a bit, and some of the musicians, and it's an interesting place. Of course, it's evolving probably since you were there. I think people are
Yeah.
leaving LA to do stuff elsewhere, but it must have been a great place to be musically. What
Oh,
kind
it
of
was.
what kind of how did you sort of navigate that environment? Was a lot of it around the academia, or did you get
Yeah,
out and
yeah.
go into
So
like, yeah.
so when I moved to LA, I had been teaching at the University of Oklahoma, where I was also principal percussion in the Oklahoma City Philharmonic. So I had both of those things going at the same time. I was playing with the orchestra 200 nights a year, teaching all day long, every day, almost. My kids were growing up, and I could hardly ever go to one of their concerts because I always had something. I couldn't go to the parent-teacher meetings or their basketball games or soccer games or those sorts of things. It was, and I had done some research that led to some pretty cool advances in internet technologies related to teaching of music online. This is in the early days of the internet, before things like Zoom and Skype even existed. And USC found out about me and contacted me and kind of made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And essentially, it meant that I would just have one job. And so when I moved to LA, one of the things I did was I stopped playing. I mean, almost cold turkey. We had when you live in LA, it's like every third house has somebody that has played with Earth, Wind, and Fire, or I mean, it's like, and so we would have these neighborhood jams, and I would go sit in on some of those and things like that. But no, I wasn't playing professionally in LA, and it was really around the academic work. And then the arranging. I was doing a lot of arranging and orchestrating for people. I do a nice thing with taking pop and rock songs and orchestrating them. So for artists that want to then perform with a symphony orchestra, I do a lot of that sort of stuff. And or I did, I should say. It's like I said, since moving here, I've sort of fallen off people's radar. But yeah, I wasn't playing very much. And so I'm actually playing more now that I'm retired here in Portugal. Playing actually quite a bit.
Um, so yeah, so you didn't get, and so then you didn't even get as much of a chance to do the network in the scene or anything like that. No.
No, I
Huh.
mean, I crossed paths with a lot of people because at USC that was that was a major hub
Right.
for music, and it's one of the best music schools in the country.
Right.
And we had anybody and everybody coming in.
Right.
And I mean, when I would look around the faculty and realize who all these people were, it's like, oh my
Right.
God, why am I here with these people? I'm not worthy. I mean, there were some major, major heavy hitters on that faculty. And so we always had amazing guest artists coming in, people doing master classes for us, and so I got to sort of network on that level, but not in a performance level.
Mm. I'm guessing, and you have a lot of your focus was music technology, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was
Um,
I, I was technically on the composition faculty at USC,
okay.
uh, but my main focus was music technology, and I ran the tech program there, and also any of the composition students that were studying electronic music would work with me.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to feel out whether you know Jim Wilson or not. Probably
I know
not.
that name. I know that
I mean,
name.
it's
Yeah.
probably a common name, but
Yeah, it could be.
he's a piano tuner,
Okay.
and he's been on the program a couple times, and he just wrote a memoir, tuned in memoirs of a piano man, and his thing, which might have an overlap. Well, he's at L.A. He moved to L.A. And then he was one of the first installers of the I forget what they called it at the time, but it was the MIDI link so that you could play your acoustic piano and it would make,
Yeah.
other sounds or
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
You
Right.
could
Right.
go
Right. Right.
around and
Yeah.
get to install those
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
interesting people.
Cool. Cool.
But yeah, it doesn't sound like you knew him very well.
I like I said, I may have run across him, but I can't say that I know him.
Yeah, no problem. So, well, we'd be wrapping up here pretty soon, maybe the next 5 or 10 minutes. But
Sure.
I do want to touch upon, AI. I know you're not, active heavily in that domain, but you probably have some opinions and especially in light of your study of music technology, right? There's so many interesting
Yeah.
things going on. But yeah, what are you seeing? What are your thoughts? Where do you think things are going?
Yeah. I think artificial intelligence or artificial ignorance. I can see it going both ways. I think it's fascinating. I am quite fascinated by it. I am at the same time quite leery and careful of it. I think it's in knowledgeable hands. It can be a great tool. I think what we're seeing is a lot of crap because of people that aren't careful. I think also the tech bros of Silicon Valley are much more interested in making profits than in putting guardrails on their devices, and so I think it has become a bit of a beast that is becoming unmanageable, and I think we're going to rue the day that some things get out of hand. Musically, I've heard it compose things. What I find is it often does a phenomenal job of doing the sounds of whatever the song is. I mean, the voice it uses, the drums, the guitars, whatever, they often sound really good and convincing. It's like, wow, this could have been a recorded project. I find it's often lacking in sort of originality. Sometimes you'll hear an interesting little hook that, oh, I hadn't heard that before, but most of the time I find it's like, yeah, I've heard that before. It's I've actually played with it a bit. There are several engines that are specifically designed for songwriting and composition, and I find it interesting that you can't say something like, create a song that sounds like Whitney Houston. They won't let you use a name, but you
Okay.
can say, create a song that sounds like a soul, gospel, blues, rock, arena type of voice with a wide range. And so you essentially describe Whitney Houston. And what you end up hearing, my God, that really sounds close to Whitney. Or I'm
Right.
just using her as an example, but
Right.
it's kind of amazing. It's never as good. But what I have found is a lot of times it can be a good kickstart to something. And it can, oh yeah, that's an interesting idea. Let me see what I can do with that. And so it's like, anybody can pick up a hammer and pound on things with it. But it takes, a good craftsman and even an artisan to make a piece of furniture, and that somebody actually wants to have. And so I think that's where we're going to start to see the difference. I think one of the other interesting things that I'm finding about AI is because AI essentially just vacuum cleans what's on the internet. It just sucks up all the content on the internet. And now so much of the internet content is created by AI that it's essentially ingesting its own output. And it's creating this circular feedback loop. And especially in the early days of AI, where so much of it was really bad and slop, and they talk about AI slop. So it's ingesting and regurgitating sloppy slop.
Right.
And so I find it, like I said, I don't ever take it at its word. I do use it as kind of a reference point periodically, but certainly I don't. I'm not seeing that it's at the point where I really want to let it control my musical life.
Hmm.
And it like I said, it can help if you're kind of stuck on a particular sequence of chords or something, and say, show me some different examples, and you know, its facility might be a little better than mine to try to play through some of those progressions or something. So, yeah, why not? I'll listen to it. But I'm not going to ultimately let it make the decision.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. Yeah, yeah, I kind of agree. Yes, on a bunch of fronts. Yeah, it is. It's kind of, I'm blown away at how much it sounds like real music,
Oh
and
my
you're
God,
like, what?
yeah,
There's like a
yeah.
person singing. Like that's
Oh
how did
yeah,
they put that
oh yeah,
together?
yeah.
Um,
Somebody brought me a recording not long ago that they had given a prompt to one of these songwriting things, and I swear I thought it was Megan Trainor that I was listening to.
mhm.
And it was an AI generated voice, but the voice so much sounded like her. The style of the song was absolutely the kind of thing that she would do. And it was like, good grief, this is crazy. But yeah, I mean, I understand why people are fearful of it. And, right now, people that are sophisticated can still tell the difference. But as rapidly as it's growing, how long will it even overcome that?
Hmm.
That's what really worries me. I'm already seeing people falling for this photo that they saw of something or another, and it's like, hey, this is proof that no. So yeah, it's coming.
Yeah, yeah, it's getting complicated. But yeah, I do. It can be inspiring. And I have a friend who's not a musician at all, but he's always been like a record collector and stuff. And it's he he plays the Suno, which is one of the that'll create songs for you and things like that. And what he seems to like to do, which I think is, again, like you said, it's fun to kind of stimulate ideas, is he throws together genres, and like, styles, and like he created this band. It was like a band from Latin America. And it was like a lost record, and they were influenced by the Beatles and this and that, and and then you hear it, oh yeah, that is really cool to think of that. And then, but it does make, as a musician, it makes me want to go and try to play around with that sound, not necessarily listen to this track over and over again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't think I've found anything that I want to listen to more than once or twice.
Yeah, same. I haven't. And I also am curious, I have not, I just realized I haven't really looked into what some of the bigger artists are doing, with AI music. You got to imagine they're incorporating and using it, but I
Well,
haven't actually heard it much.
I'm sure they are. To what's one of the things that it is having a huge impact on is there used to be this whole group of people that wrote underscoring music and background music and music for industrial films and all of that sort of stuff, where people often really don't care about the quality, quite
Right.
honestly.
Just get something.
But people made a living doing that.
Right.
And now somebody says, "Hey, I need an industrial track that has a beat at 92 beats per minute and has kind of a this kind of a feel to it, and it's 2 minutes and 37 seconds long." And and somebody just lost a job.
Hmm.
So yeah, I have some concerns along those lines.
Yeah. Yeah. And from the royalty perspective too, that
Hmm.
probably somebody should be getting paid for it that isn't, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
whether
yeah,
why they train the models.
yeah,
Um, Well, we unfortunately we do have to wrap up here pretty
yeah,
soon, but it's been fun.
yeah.
I always like to give people a moment at the end here to, say your piece. If you have words of wisdom, want to send us to a website, have a moment to say your piece,
Sure.
and then I'll sign us off.
Sure. Well, I will just plug my website, which is just briank.shepard.com. And people welcome to visit it. It has a lot about my background and some other examples of my music, some quite not so disjointed as the example we played earlier. Um, but I just the thing that I really try to drive home with all of my students, with anybody that I've worked with in the music profession, is never be afraid to ask why. Never be afraid to ask how. Never be afraid to ask what. Just keep asking. It's the curiosity that really propels us. It's what's led me in so many avenues where, friends, well, I don't think I want to do that. Why not? Hey, let's see what it's all about. And often I open a door that's like, wow, this is really cool. Sometimes it's not, but it's always an opportunity. So yeah, curiosity has been my sort of guiding light my entire life. It continues to be. It's what brought me here. It's what's gotten me doing all of these crazy things like learning new Portuguese instruments, or quite old Portuguese instruments, I should say. But so yeah, keep it up. Keep asking those questions, and it's fun.
Wonderful. Well said. All right, I'll walk us out, and then we'll sign off here.
Great.
We have reached the end of another thrilling journey here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. Thanks a lot, of course, to Brian Shepard for joining us today.
My
As
pleasure.
always, yes, of course, and of course our audience that joined us as well. Thanks for being here. As always, we're brought to you by Piano Tech Masterclasses, cutting edge instruction for piano industry masters without leaving your home. If you join us today by signing up for the session independently, make your life more convenient. Just subscribe to Piano Tech Radio, just $16 a month. You get the direct recording of today's session in a member area, as well as automatic registration for each week's new session. And sign up at bit.ly/joinptrh. That's bit.ly/joinptrh. Don't forget about the podcast, the Substack, the socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and to sign up for the email list at our website, pianotechnicianmasterclass.com. Just your name and email. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you again.